we discussed that all the characters and events in the story in any allegory, they stand for double meanings. They have got double representation. For example, the Red Cross Knight, he stands for holiness in the poem, as he is the allegorical representation of holiness. Lady Una represents truth, and she represents true religion. Then there is the portrayal of Roman Catholic Church also as villain. Now when we look at the surface story, it is an adventure. जब हम स्टोरी को देखते हैं, जब हम फेरी क्वीन की, एज वी हैव रेड द टेक्स्ट ऑफ बुक 1 कैंटो 1, उसमें हमने क्या देखा है कि एक नाइट जो है वो स्टोरी जो स्टार्ट होती है, स्टार्ट से ही स्टोरी का एक एडवेंचर है कि नाइट जो है वो अपने घोड़े पर सवार एक किसी एडवेंचर पर जा रहा है, और उसकी पूरी डिस्क्रिप्शन दी गई है। उसके साथ लेडी ऊना है, उसके साथ एक लैम्ब, और जो उसने पूरी डिस्क्रिप्शन हमें बताई गई है कि उनके पास क्या क्या सामान है, और उनके साथ एक ड्वार्फ भी है जिसने लेडी ऊना का जो है वो जरूरी सामान का एक बैग जो है वो अपने ऊपर उठाया हुआ है। देन ऑन देयर वे, रास्ते में जो है वो जब वो जा रहे थे तो एकदम से बादल आ गए, और उन बादलों के साथ न सिर्फ बारिश थी, एक बहुत शदीद किस्म का तूफान था। इन हालात में इन तीनों लोगों के लिए किसी जगह पर अपने लिए किसी महफूज मकाम का इंतखाब करना था, जहां पर कि कुछ देर के लिए रुक सके और अपने आप को इस तूफान से बचा सके। They looked for some place to take shelter. They could see a cave nearby. अब उन्हें जब एक केव नजर आया, वो उसके अंदर एंटर हो गए, और it was very thickly populated. हर तरफ से घने दरख्तों ने उसको घेरा हुआ था। When they entered the cave, जब वो केव में दाखिल हो गए तो हमें कंप्लीट डिस्क्रिप्शन मिलती है कि वहाँ पर किस किस किस्म के दरख्त थे। वहाँ पर ओक ट्रीज थे, पाइन ट्रीज थे, देन देयर वर अ नंबर ऑफ अदर ट्रीज आल्सो, एंड स्पेंसर मेंशंस द वर्क आल्सो दैट व्हाट आर दीज, व्हाट इज द पर्पस ऑफ दीज ट्रीज। कुछ उसमें से जो है वो फ्रूट ट्रीज हैं, कुछ इमारती लकड़ी के लिए इस्तेमाल होते हैं, कुछ जलाने के लिए इस्तेमाल होते हैं, कुछ जो है वो दरवाजों के लिए इस्तेमाल होते हैं, कुछ से कॉफन और फ्यूनरल बनाए जाते हैं, कुछ जो है कॉफन बनाने के लिए इस्तेमाल होते हैं। तो स्पेंसर ने एक बहुत विविड डिस्क्रिप्शन दी है, बहुत क्लियरली डिस्क्राइब करते हुए ना, दिस पार्ट ऑफ इट इज नॉट डायरेक्टली रेलेवेंट टू द मेन प्लॉट ऑफ द स्टोरी। दिस इज अ सॉर्ट ऑफ डाइग्रेशन। ये डाइग्रेशन है इसमें, जिसमें दिस इज नॉट द मेन पार्ट ऑफ द स्टोरी, दिस इज नोन एज डाइग्रेशन, क्योंकि यहाँ पर पोएट जो है वो मेन स्टोरी से जो मेन प्लॉट है, क्योंकि मेन जो प्लॉट है वो लोग एडवेंचर की तलाश में जा रहे हैं, और अभी तक उन्हें बारिश और तूफान की वजह से उन्हें किसी महफूज मकाम की तलाश थी, और उस महफूज मकाम की तलाश में वो उस गार में दाखिल हो गए, और वहाँ पर जो है हमें इस पूरे सीन की डिस्क्रिप्शन मिलती है कि वहाँ पर किस किस्म के दरख्त है और उन दरख्तों की लकड़ी किस मकसद के लिए इस्तेमाल होती है। Now, when they thought that it was there had been enough time and the storm was over and they wanted to get out of that cave, ताकि वो दोबारा अपना सफ़र शुरू कर सकें, वो केव, वो उस गार से बाहर निकलना चाहते थे, but it became very difficult. वो जिस रास्ते पर भी जाते, जो भी उन्हें लगता कि this will be the way out of the cave, वो हर दफ़ा एक नए रास्ते पर जा रहे होते थे, और वो बुरी तरह से वहाँ पर फंस के रह गए थे। ऐसा लगता था जैसे उन्होंने अपना रास्ता खो दिया हो। यहाँ तक कि वो एक गार के पास पहुंचे। Now this was the cave. Lady Una asked him to be careful because there might be a danger hidden there. There might be some enemy hidden there. लेकिन नाइट ने जवाब दिया कि अगर वहाँ पर खतरा है तो वो इसलिए पीछे नहीं हट सकता कि खतरे से डरता है। और नाइटहुड के लिए ये एक बहुत शेमफुल मकाम है, वो बहुत ज़्यादा काबिले मुजम्मत मकाम है कि कोई भी दुश्मन जो है या कोई भी खतरा जो है इस तरीके से वहाँ पर मौजूद रहे। Then he entered into the cave and he found that there was a huge monster lying inside the cave, and then now we have the description of the cave. The description, first of all, we have the description of the monster, then we have the description of the cave also, that it was a very very dark cave. इतना डार्क था कि वहाँ पर कोई रोशनी अंदर नहीं जा सकती थी, ना दिन में और ना ही रात में। देन अबाउट द मॉन्स्टर वी कम टू नो के मॉन्स्टर की जो है हाफ ऑफ इट्स बॉडी वाज लाइक अ सर्पेंट, वो सांप की तरह की थी, एंड हाफ ऑफ इट्स बॉडी वाज लाइक अ वमन। The monster and the knight, now they were in front of each other. They had a huge fight. The monster was very powerful, very strong, and huge also. It had a very long tail, and it caught hold of the knight. It became very difficult for the knight to get himself freed from the circles of the monster's tail. But Lady Una was there who could comfort him, जिसने उसको उसकी असल मुकाम याद दिलाया, उसका मकसद याद दिलाया कि वो किस वजह से वहाँ पर आया है. These words, they comforted him, and they were through these words he was able to recollect his powers, and in this way he was able to get one of his hand free with full force, and with that one hand he took hold of his sword. He got hold of the monster's stomach also, and when he got a tight control of monster's stomach, what happened? The monster was forced to vomit out everything from its stomach. Now this was a very, very sad scene here. It was a very it was a situation which was unbelievable for the knight, because he could see a number of books and toads and frogs, and the blood was as black as that of ink. So all these things, apparently it is the story, and then on the allegorical level, these all represented the condition of the state of the church. Then there were thousands of offsprings of the monster who were also lying there, and who were trying initially, when the knight peeped into the cave, these small offsprings of the thousands of offsprings tried to go into the mouth of their mother. The knight took by all in this situation, the knight freed himself from the monster's tail, and he was forced to move aside because of the foul and filthy smell of the material that the monster had vomited out. And what he did finally, he took his sword, he very boldly beheaded the monster, and in this way he had the triumph, the victory over his first enemy, and he was successful in his first adventure. Then Lady Una was there, who greeted him on his victory. And not only the monster, when he killed the monster, all those thousands of serpents who were the offsprings of the monster, they drank the blood of their dying mother, and their bellies burst, and they themselves died. So they brought an end to their lives. They themselves brought an end to their lives. So this was the ultimate end of the monster and its offsprings, and the knight was victorious. So this was the apparent story on the surface level. Then they started their journey once again. They traveled a long way, and they reached a place. They saw an old man, and that they started talking to the old man. The knight inquired him if he could tell him about some adventure, about some tyrant or somebody cruel, that so that he could fight against him. First, the old man, he did not tell him anything. He said that since he is a holy man, he keeps on praying for his sins all the time. He spends his time in his chapel, so he does not know about any worldly affairs, and he cannot tell him. How can he tell him about any worldly things? Then he said that there is a man, he lives in a far off place, and he is the one who has destroyed the whole land, but he lives at a very far off place. Lady Una, when she heard that that tyrant lives at a very far off place, she advised the knight to take some rest in that place, so that they could start their journey on the next day with new vigor and with new power and strength. The old man also supported her point of view. He said that the knight has been given good advice and they better take rest before proceeding on their journey. So they finally agreed, the knight and Lady Una agreed, and they went to the old man to his home to spend the night there. When they reached the old man there, nobody was around in that house. It was only the old man, so they did not expect any supper or any dinner from the old man. There was a chapel near the a small hut near the hermitage that the old man had established for himself, far from the worries, from the busy life of the city. When they went into the home, the old man started talking to them about different religious and pious things. He talked about the lives of saints and popes. So apparently, so far, he had appeared to be a very pious and a very noble man. Then when his guests, they went to sleep, he went to his study room and he sat among his magic books. Now from those magic books he took some of the words, he made verses from those words, and he called upon some spirits. From those spirits they started revolving around his head like flies, and he took among them he took two of the falsest spirits to take some work, and he sent the rest. He sent one of the spirit to the house of the god of sleep. It was a journey of the spirit to the underworld. The spirit went there to bring a false dream to disturb the mind of the guests who had come and who were staying in the old man's house. With the second spirit, the old man made a false Lady Una, and he made her dress exactly like Una in order to disturb. So this was the artificially created Lady Una. When the first spirit had returned after taking the dream from the god of sleep, he sent both the spirits to disturb the sleeping knight, who was sleeping without any worries and without any bad thoughts. Now first of all, the false dream disturbed the mind of the knight, and he started dreaming of things that he would never wish to dream of. And then that included the lustful thinking and all that. Later on, when he woke up, he could see Lady Una lying in front of him, and the way she behaved, it was something very strange. It was something that had bewildered the knight. First, he was so angry that he wanted to kill Lady Una, and he was thinking that what she was doing, that she is of such a light character. She talked to him for a while, but the knight respected her a lot since she had descended from a royal family. So he restricted himself, he restrained himself from killing her, and he asked her to go to her room to take rest. When he started thinking about the lady, the conduct of the lady, that how had she behaved and what troubled her to behave in such a strange manner. For a while he thought that this is the character of the old lady. She is of such a light character for whose sake he was ready to shed his own blood. He was ready to sacrifice his own life. Since he was very tired after having these thoughts in his mind, after a while he went to sleep once again, and when he went to sleep, the false dream once again started disturbing him. When he woke up, he returned back. So this was the apparent story that we have read in the Faerie Queen, in the text of the Faerie Queen. Now apparently it is the story of adventure that has few characters. The knight as the here representing having lots of courage and valor and strength. He had the first adventure against the monster. He slayed the monster. With him there was Lady Una, who was a source of comfort for him, and they later on met the magician. They met the old man who represented hypocrisy. He was the way he appeared contrary to his appearance was contrary to what he actually was. So this was the basic story of the adventure. On the other hand, we have it in the allegorical form also. In the allegorical form, we see that truth always accompanies holiness, and truth sustains holiness. It brings comfort. It is the source of gathering courage for holiness. So these holiness and truth, from this story of adventure, we come to know that holiness and truth, they always go side by side. And when we come to know about the monster, all that scene, that is portrayal of the Roman Catholic Church, and it serves as the villain in this story. So in the allegorical representation of the Roman Catholic Church, we find it as the villain. When the poem opens, there is an invocation to the muse. This is an introduction to the poem. It consists of 4 stanzas, and it is after Spenser has written invocation to the muses after the classical tradition. In these 4 stanzas, Spenser begins with a formal introduction, and he states the purpose of writing the Faerie Queene. He says that purpose and theme also. He states the theme very clearly. He says that I am going to shift from pastoral poetry to the epic poetry, and the subject matters of both the poetry are very different. The epic poetry deals with the he says that he is going to talk about the great deeds of warriors, and these great deeds nobody has talked of in history. Then there is an elaborate invocation. He invokes in the names of muses. He says that since it is something new to him and he is not so sharp and cunning so that he could undertake this task, he seeks help from different muses. He seeks help from the goddess of history, Clio. He seeks help from Cupid, the god of love. He seeks help from Venus, who is the goddess of beauty. And finally, he seeks help from the Queen Elizabeth, who is the queen, and he says that you are all powerful, your majesty. I seek help from all these in order to undertake this greatest task that I have that I'm going to do. So and this is after the classical tradition of Homer and Virgil, since those great writers, they wrote epic poems, and those epic poems, they constituted, or they had the formal beginning of invocation to the muses. So he follows that classical tradition in the Faerie Queene also. Then we talked about epic, that an epic is a long narrative poem, and it should have a number of characteristics. There are certain elements of an epic, and we find that most of these elements are present in the Faerie Queene. Since we have read the book 1, Canto 1, we know that there are most of these elements are present in the Faerie Queene also. It is a long, first of all, it is a long narrative poem, which is a narration, which states a story. The Faerie Queene is a long narrative poem. It has a story at the surface level, and it contains books and parts also. For example, it has 6 books, and all these 6 books have 12 parts. So it is a long narrative poem. So the first condition for an epic is fulfilled. About an epic is always about a great soldier or a hero. So the soldier is someone, or the hero of an epic is somebody who possesses great character qualities. He is a larger than life, he is a superman kind of person, who is loyal, who has got strength, stamina, who has got the sense of justice. So he has got all the good character qualities, he has got persistence, and he has many other traits of culture and time as well. So here when we see the Faerie Queen, so the knight represents Prince Arthur. So this is another characteristic of an epic. In medias res, literally it means in the middle of things. When we analyze the Faerie Queen, we see that the knight is riding on his horse and it is on its way. Now where he was going and what was the purpose or what had happened before that about all those incidents, when we begin with the poem, we do not know. We are not given any, the story does not have a proper beginning in the sense that we do not know that what had happened earlier or what was the cause where he was going. The epic begins in medias res and then flashes back to events that took place before the narrator's current time setting. So it is later on the reader is introduced to the events that had taken place earlier. For example, in the Faerie Queen, Lady Una's father ruled over the world, ruled from east to west. We do not know about that time. Then the dragon came and took hold of the state and expelled them from their castle. So all these things we do not know. So basically that is also a part of this story. And then Queen Gloriana, and then how did Lady Una go to Queen Gloriana, and we do not know about all these things. We are just told that the knight was assigned this task by Queen Gloriana, and he was going to, later on when we have the description of Lady Una and her needments and all that, then we come to know that the knight was going to restore her state, is going to get back that state, her father's castle, from a dragon. So in Faerie Queen also, again, another important element of an epic is present, which is in media res, that it begins in the middle of things. So we are told about the beginning, the proper beginning, later on when we have the description of Lady Una. Invocation to the muse. Invocation is a help, that you seek help from god or goddesses. Spencer invokes the muse, as we just discussed in great detail, that first he gives an introduction, he states the theme of his poem, and then he talks, then he invokes in the name of a number of muses. He seeks help from Cleo, he seeks help from the goddess of beauty. He also seeks help from Cupid, the god of love. He seeks help from Venus, the goddess of beauty. He seeks help from Mars, the god of war, and finally he seeks help from the Queen Elizabeth. Then an epic consists of battles or deeds of valor. In Faerie Queen we do find the journeys, the battles. The knight fights against the monster. Then the second enemy that the knight encounters is the magician. He is a hypocrite, and he has got his double standards. He appears to be a holy man, but on the other hand he is not a pious or a noble man. He is a magician. Then there is another journey also, the journey of the spirit to the underworld, to the house of the god of sleep. So that is, so there are different journeys included in the Faerie Queen. Supernatural elements, gods or other supernatural or fantastic beings take part in the action of the story. So we see that in the action of the story we see the spirits, first of all the two spirits, and the god of sleep also sending that false dream for Archimago. That is another, so the inclusion of spirits and gods, this is another important element of an epic. journeys. The setting is broad and often includes supernatural realms, especially the land of dead. So it includes journeys, the underworld journeys also. Epic similes are usually the elaborate extended simile, extended comparisons. In Faerie Queen we find the simile of the river Nile. लिटरेरी डिवाइसेस का यूज किया जाता है. नाउ लिटरेरी डिवाइसेस में हमारे पास एपिथेट और ट्रांसफर्ड एपिथेट आर टू इम्पॉर्टेंट लिटरेरी डिवाइसेस दैट आर यूजुअली यूज्ड इन एन एपिक. In Faerie Queen also we find the phrase like weary night. अब weary night, weary is the characteristic feature of human beings. इंसान थकते हैं, वो एग्जॉस्ट होते हैं. रात नहीं थकती, रात तो रात है, वो तो उसमें वो ह्यूमंस की कैरेक्टरिस्टिक क्वालिटीज तो नहीं, ये तो लिविंग बीइंग्स हैं, ये इंसान है जो कि थकते हैं. So this is the use of the literary device in that. Then we discussed the epic and romance, that there are differences between epic and romance. The epic action is centered around. It is also sometimes argued that whether the Faerie Queen is an epic or is it a romance. We discussed some of the elements that we have found in the epic, but if we look at the difference in epic and romance, we will find that there are certain elements of romance also. For example, in a romance, there is only one hero. Any romance deals with the exploits, with the actions of one hero only, and that hero is of historical significance. Moreover, the plot of the structure of an epic has unity, whereas the structure of a romance is loose. So when we look at these characteristics, we find that in every book in the Faerie Queen there is a different night. In the 12 cantos there is one night, and then in the next 12 cantos there is another night. So this deals, and a romance also deals with the deeds of warriors of maybe 6, 7 or 10 different people. On the other hand, epic deals with the exploits of only one person. So this is one of the, we can say that Spencer had collected, he has introduced both the characteristics. Some of the characteristic features of romance are also present in the Faerie Queen. Then the use of epic similes. Epic similes are usually extended comparisons. These are extended metaphors. Then the use of the supernatural machinery. This was another element of an epic poem. We find the use of supernatural machinery, the use of spirits, gods in the Faerie Queen, and the hero. Now, since the characteristic features of romance and epic both are present in the Faerie Queen, but there are very few features of a romance, and most of them, the features that dominate, they are of an epic poem. So we can say that the Faerie Queen can be considered as a hybrid epic. Hybrid is a mixed epic, mixed in the sense that it contains some of the qualities of a romance also. So in other words, it can be termed as a romantic epic. Now, after discussing the Faerie Queen as a romance or as an epic, we come up to the elements, to the characteristic features of the age. All the characteristic features of the age are also reflected in the poetry. During the Renaissance, there was a spirit of adventure. We find that spirit of adventure in the Faerie Queen also. There was love for beauty, there was love for richness and magnificence. There was a revival of the old classical literature, and in that there were certain writers who were copied, who were followed. Among them there was Aristotle, Plato, Virgil, Aristo and Tasso. We find references from that, and at the very beginning, when we look at the division of 12 books, and we come to know that in every book the knight will represent one virtue. and these virtues he has taken from Aristotle's work. So there is moreover when he talks of 12 books, that division is also after the Virgil's works, and even the inclusion of invocation to the muses, that is once again the revival of the old classical literature. Then classical mythology, there are at a number of places there are references to classical mythology, and then there is seriousness and moral earnestness also. There is during Renaissance there was a tradition to write in epic form. So Spencer, since he was a man of Renaissance, he lived during that era, he was also influenced by the characteristic features of the age, so he also wrote in the epic form. Now the Faerie Queene contains not only the elements of Renaissance, it contains the elements of Reformation also. Reformation was basically a religious movement. It was a revolt against the authority of the church. So we do find these characteristic features also present in the Faerie Queene. The Protestants rose against Roman Catholic Church, and since they protested against the Roman Catholic Church, they were known as the Protestants. And we find in Spencer's poetry that he was a Platonic and he was Epicurean, who believed in eat, drink and be merry, and but he was a true Protestant. He was a religious person also at heart. When we read the Faerie Queene, it is not a simple story of an adventure. It has got religious and moral significance also. The Faerie Queene as an allegory, if we look at the allegory in the Faerie Queene, the Red Cross Knight, since it represents holiness, so wherever the holiness goes, even when the knight comes across the monster, we know that the evil and the virtue, they are in front of each other, and they are going to fight. Now holiness alone cannot stand, वो अकेले कुछ नहीं हो सकता उसके साथ truth has to be there. अगर ये दोनों साथ रहेंगे, it will be benefited. Everybody, human beings will also get benefit of it. अगर दोनों holiness और truth साथ साथ नहीं होंगे, अगर इनको separate कर दिया जाए, as it is there in Canto 2. In Canto 2, the old man, towards the end of Canto 1, old man was able to separate Lady Una from the knight, from holiness. So truth is separated. By the end of Canto 1, we find that truth is separated from holiness. Moreover, there is the portrayal of the Roman Catholic Church as villain. So when we look at the moral allegory, it was the spirit of Renaissance that man should be held responsible for his own deeds. It focuses on the moral values, that every individual is responsible for whatever he does. और एक code of conduct होता है, लोगों को पता होना चाहिए कि उनको किस तरीके से behave करना है. So that is the reason that he even when we look at the very purpose of writing the Faerie Queene, उसने क्यों लिखा है कि वो लोगों को बताना चाहता था, वो अपनी पोइम के जरिए से ये बात स्प्रेड करना चाहता था कि एक नोबल इंसान को किस तरह से जिंदगी गुजारनी चाहिए. This was the basic purpose of writing, and that nobility he had embodied in the knight, in the character of the knight. उसने knight के जरिए से बताया कि ये एक फिगर है जिसकी जिंदगी में मुख्तलिफ खतरात आ रहे हैं, जैसे monster है, he had to fight. First the danger was not hid. It was first of all it was hidden. When it was there in front of him, it was all clear. He had to fight, he had to display his valor and strength. तो वो सारी characteristic qualities बता रहा है कि किसी भी इंसान को, किसी भी एक virtuous man को, एक noble इंसान को किस तरीके से जिंदगी गुजारनी चाहिए. In sharp contrast to vice. अब वाइस में हमारे पास यहाँ पर एरर है, एक मॉन्स्टर है, हमारे पास द ओल्ड मैन है, आर्चीमेगो, and how he resisted all those plans of the old man. So this is how he is teaching the people. So this is the moral allegory in the poem. He is trying to teach the people that how a noble man, how a virtuous man should lead his life. There is the use of religious allegory also, as we talked about earlier also, that the monster represented the Roman Catholic Church, और उसने जो vomit out भी material किया था उसमें भी चीज़ें symbolic थी. उसकी जो blood था वो ink के color का था, वो black था जैसे ink हो. Since it represents vice, क्योंकि वो बुराई को रेफर कर रहा है, इसलिए हर ज़्यादातर चीज़ें उसमें black थी. फिर उसमें frogs and toads है जिसमें आमतौर पर हम नफरत करते हैं. So frogs and toads, since they are loathsome, उसने उससे अपना हेट्रेड जो है वो शो करने के लिए उसको फ्रॉग्स एंड टोड्स का फिगर यूज किया है टू रिप्रेजेंट द रोमन हिज हेट्रेड टुवर्ड्स द रोमन कैथोलिक चर्च एंड टुवर्ड्स द क्लर्जीमैन हु बिलोंग टू द रोमन कैथोलिक चर्च. On the other hand, we had the true religion, we had holiness. Even the old man, he represented error. वो error को represent कर रहा है, and he tried to deceive, he tried to beguile his guests who were staying there in his house for a night. But he was not successful in that, because the knight was surprised at the behavior of the lady, what had made her to behave in that particular way, because he had a very pious image of the lady in his mind, that she is virtuous, she is very noble, she has descended from a royal family. So he could not believe himself that the way she was behaving, so he returned back from that place, and the old man was able to separate truth from holiness. He was able to separate the knight from Lady Una. Then there is political and personal allegory also. The queen of the fairyland represents Queen Elizabeth, and Prince Arthur is represented by the knight, and sometimes some critics, they also believe that it is the Earl of Leicester whom the knight represents. So this is the personal allegory, that the people who were present in England during that time, they are also represented by different figures in the story. And it was after reading his poem that Queen Elizabeth granted him pension for his service to the English court. When we look at the text, his poetry has got picturesque quality. We have got vivid descriptions throughout Canto 1. When we discuss all these aspects, all these perspectives of the Fairy Queen, we have to quote examples from for different points. Whatever we say, we have to give a reference of that. For example, we have the description of the landscape. Now, description of the landscape is present at all the places. When they are there at the cave, first of all, at the very beginning, and then when they reach the cave, the scene is described. When they reach the old man's house, they met him, the scene is described once again, that what type of a place is it. It is near the forest, and then there is a chapel also. So all that description, that vivid description is given. Then the description of characters is also given. We have clear description of the characters, कि वो किस तरह के characters हैं, उन्होंने क्या पहना हुआ है, वो क्या कर रहे हैं. लेडी ऊना के जैसे नाइट है, नाइट ने एक शील्ड पहनी हुई है, और उसका क्या मकसद है उन सब चीज़ों का. सो ही हैज़ गिवन द डिस्क्रिप्शन प्लस द कमेंट्स विद दोज डिस्क्रिप्शंस. सो इन द केस ऑफ द डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ द कैरेक्टर्स, ही टेल्स अस क्लियरली कि इवन जो सॉर्ड है नाइट का, वो किस तरह का है और उसको कितना यूज़ किया जा चुका है. देन ही गिव्स द डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ लेडी ऊना, and in the description of Lady Una, we come to know about her horse, the animal. We come to know about the ass that she is riding on. Then we come to know about her dress, her clothes, what type of dress she is wearing, and how she is carrying herself. Then with them there was a lamb. We have the description of the lamb as well, and it represented innocence. Then we come to know about the description of we have the appearance of the dwarf, that it looked lazy because it was lagging behind, and what it was carrying, we have all that description. And when we talk about the description of the landscape, we have the description of the trees also. When they entered the cave, there were different trees, and what are those, what is the purpose, and for what purpose those trees are used, we also come to know about that. So we have lots of description in the Faerie Queene, so his poetry carries that picturesque quality. Then the description of the supernatural elements. Now at every place there are large number of use of large number of literary devices. हमें हर point पर एक simile, एक metaphor के through पता चलता है कि वो चीज़ किस तरह की दिखती थी. For example, when the old man he made some charm out of those words, and he read those verses. He had a number of spirits moving round his head. The poet told clearly that those spirits, they were moving in a manner as if they were humming bees. So we have the description. Then we come to know about the false Lady Una, the creation of false Lady Una, that how he created her and the way she looked like the real Lady Una. Then when the spirit reaches the house of the god of sleep, the gates are described. Then there are watchdogs who were sitting there in front of the doors. A description of the doors, that there were two doors present there. One was made up of ivory and the other door was made up of the silver. And what were those doors supposed to bring? Then the scene inside the house when the spirit was trying to wake up the god of sleep. The whole scene was described, that it was made very melodious by a combination of the water drops falling on the roof and the wind. So with that combination, there a very musical scene was created. So again, this adds up to the picturesque quality of his poetry. Then when they reach, after that they start their journey again, and when they reach that old man, once again we have vivid description of the old man, how he is dressed, how he looked, उसकी सारी, उसका घर किस तरह का था, उसको वो एक बहुत होली मैन लग रहा था, जैसे कि वो दुनिया की मसरूफियात से दूर, उस बिजी लाइफ से दूर एक गोशा नशीनी की उसने ज़िंदगी इख्तियार की हुई थी, और वो हर वक्त जो है वो रोज़री पर अपने जो है वो गुनाहों की बख्शिश तलब करता रहता हो. So we had the vivid description of all these things. Then all these instances of the picturesque quality of Spenser's poetry, they have to be quoted. A phrase or a line can be quoted in order to give the evidence, that evidence in the favor of the statement. Now the old man looked very pious and noble. It was the way he appeared. So through the lines of the poetry, the reader is also made to believe that the old man was a very pious and a very noble man. So this has great influence on the poetry, that through words he is painting the picture in the minds of the reader. And when later on, when we come to know that when all the guests, they went to sleep and he went to his study room and he sat among his magic books, then the reader comes to know the sharp contrast. So Spenser very skillfully, through his great art, he draws the picture in the mind of the reader so skillfully, in such an with such a great craft, that the reader can imagine, the reader can visualize कि किस तरह का scene होगा. Especially this is something extraordinary when he gives the description of the old man, when he gives the description of his character, कि वो दिखने में बहुत ही पायस और नोबल इंसान था, जो हर वक्त जिसकी निगाहें झुकी रहती थी ह्यूमिलिटी से, हम्बल, सिंस ही वाज हम्बल, यू नो, रिप्रेजेंटिंग हिज हम्बलनेस, ही सेड दैट उसकी निगाहें हर वक्त ज़मीन की तरफ झुकी हुई होती थी. तो उसकी एक एक वर्ड की जो डिस्क्रिप्शन ही है, उस डिस्क्रिप्शन के ज़रिए से वो एक तस्वीर बनाता है अपने रीडर के माइंड में। एंड दिस इज़ सुपर्ब, दिस शोज हिज ग्रेटेस्ट क्राफ्ट, दैट ही इज़ अ स्किलफुल पोएट who has the ability to paint a picture, to create a picture in the reader's mind। हमें उसकी एक vivid description मिल जाती है, हमें बहुत अच्छे तरीके से पता चलता है। and later on when we are told that he sits in the middle of his magic books, we are surprised that he represents hypocrisy। so this is what he is trying to focus on। तो जो भी चीज़ को वो फोकस करना चाहता है that is through his words, लेकिन उसकी जो डिस्क्रिप्शन है वो इस कदर स्ट्रांग है कि we are really made to believe कि it was like this। हमें वो पढ़कर ऐसे नहीं लगता कि it was part of it। जिस तरह से उसने ओल्ड मैन की डिस्क्रिप्शन दी है एंड लेटर ऑन उसने ये मेंशन किया है कि उसने वो अपनी मैजिक बुक्स के दरमियान जाकर बैठा और उसने कुछ वर्ड्स निकाले, तो एकदम से एक शार्प कंट्रास्ट हमारे जहन में आता है कि कैसे जो है उसने किस तरह की अपीयरेंस होगी और किसने अपना जो ट्रू सेल्फ है उसको किस तरीके से अपने आउटर अपीयरेंस में छुपाया हुआ होगा। सो दिस इज थ्रू हिज पोइट्री, थ्रू हिज वर्ड्स दैट ही इज एबल टू पेंट द पिक्चर ऑफ द सीन्स इन फ्रंट ऑफ द इन द माइंड्स ऑफ हिज रीडर्स।